and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. And happy International Women's Day. I've got a Woman Power t-shirt on. I love this t-shirt. It's from Joni. It's got a suffragette coloured banner on it and I'm very much enjoying wearing it. International Women's Day is a favourite day of mine as I love to celebrate all the international women in my life. And also, you will know that earlier this week, the Women's Prize for Fiction long list was announced, which is a prize that celebrates all female authors and books written in the English language. And I really enjoy following this. It's the past few years I've really got aboard with it, and last year I made a video where I and that came out on the day actually, where I talked through the long list and what books that I'd read, what books I hadn't read, what books I was planning to read, and I thought I'd do the same this year as well, because the list is 16 books long and I managed to predict 6, which I think is many more than I predicted last year, so I feel quite pleased about that. However, I had only read 2 on the whole list, which is quite a small amount, particularly as I read like a large percentage of my reading last year. I think like over 40% was books that were out in 2018, and a lot, like I'd say over 90% of my reading is female authors, so it just goes to show that there's so much more out there, stuff that you're not even familiar with, and quite a few of the books on the list I had never heard of before. So I thought we would go through and discover. I know this is a bit late to the party because it was out on Monday, but I thought it might be a nice chance to sort of go through and tell you what I thought about the books that I had read, what the books that I'm going to be reading, and just to learn about some of the books together. I am planning on trying to read as many as the long list as possible. I think the shortlist is announced towards the end of April, so that almost gives you 2 months to read 16 books, which is something that I could do. I normally read about 10 books a month. 14 books in fact, because I've read 2 of them already and I'm halfway through another, so 13 books. But yeah, so I thought we would just discover together. So I thought I would start with the books that I have already read and the ones that I predicted. So the first one that I predicted was Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This is a book that I read last year when I was on holiday with David in Cromer in Norfolk, and I picked this up, and if it had not been for the fact that we needed to go out and get some food, I probably would have sat and read this in one sitting. It's just just under 150 pages long, and it follows Sylvie, who is a teenager, and she is on an Iron Age reenactment trip with her mother and father. Her father is an extremely coercive and you find out later on in the book, abusive man who has led a very controlling life for Sylvie and her mother. So you're sort of looking in on that, and then also on this trip there are history students and a professor on that trip as well, and they sort of when you put them in, if you compare them to Sylvie and her family, they're seen as the very normal people, and Sylvie's relationship with her father is sort of like highlighted even in Sylvie's mind as being like, oh well, I wonder why this is happening, and then alongside all of that happening, I tell you, there's a lot going on in here for a very short book. You're also hearing the voice of a bog girl from the Iron Age, and what her life would have been like, and how she came to her end. It's atmospheric, it really packs a punch, which I know is such an easy thing to say when these books are so small, but it really does. And I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. The only thing that probably would have made it 5-star for me, and I understand why she's done this because it's very immersive, but the paragraphs are just so long. It's like pages and pages, and my reading experience, I like quite a few little paragraph breaks, but as you can see, there's pages with like 1 paragraph break, on some pages no paragraph breaks, and I think that probably would have made it a 5-star for me, but I can see why she's done that because it's very immersive and experience reading it. So yeah, those that was Ghost Wall, one of the ones that I'd read, which is 4 and 5 stars. The next one that I've read, and this is a proof copy, this isn't a the final copy, which I'm sure you all would have seen because it's been everywhere, and that's Normal People by Sally Rooney. This was the second Sally Rooney book I read. I also read Conversations with Friends. Did I read that last year or the year before? And I tell you, I love this so much. Like I sort of enjoyed Conversations with Friends. I didn't love it, but this I absolutely loved and adored. So you follow two teenagers. It starts off as 2 teenagers, Connell and Marianne. Connell's mother works as a cleaner for Marianne's family, and at school Connell is very popular. He's involved in a lot of sport. He's got a lot of friends, and Marianne is a bit of an outcast. She's very much a loner, and they sort of grow. They get into a relationship with one another, and then you see their relationship throughout the next few years, and I really like the way it's written in that it jumps really big spaces of time. So, and also every alternate chapter is told by the other one's point of view. So you'll get a chapter from Marianne, and then it will say 3 months later, and it's a chapter from Connell, and then it will say a year later and it's a chapter from Marianne, and it's really pacey and it really keeps you interested, and it also really gets you wondering about the sort of things that have happened in the time between these little snippets you're getting of their lives. When Connell and Marianne go to university, although I believe they call it college in Ireland, their sort of social roles swap. So whereas Connell's always been very popular and Marianne's always been very much a loner, Marianne becomes a very popular girl, and Connell sort of succumbs to his shyness, and he's always been sort of carried in social situations by other people, and that doesn't happen for him at university. And yeah, I just loved it. I really, really, really loved it. And it sort of goes against everything I enjoy in terms of punctuation because there's no speech marks in this book, and sometimes it's sometimes that would worry me, and that I would think, oh, who's speaking then? But it doesn't feel like that. It flows so perfectly. And when I reviewed this book, and I still feel like this now, I compared it to watching a play, because it's so pacey and you're so in the heads of these people that it just flows wonderfully. I really, really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was one of my favourite books from last year, like if not the favourite book. I had a really good reading year last year, and when I filmed my favourite books of 2018, I said on any other day this could have been my favourite book of the year. But I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. And would I love it to win? Yes, I'd love it to win. But I am aware that it's very much out there. It won Waterstone's Book of the Year. What else did it win? Did it win the Man Booker? It's won something else, I can't remember. So I'm aware it might be the time to have a look at some other books. But yeah, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. So those are the books that I had predicted that would be on the long list and that I'd read. Only 2 books from the whole list. However, I am in the middle of reading Cersei by Madeline Miller. Excuse me, clear my throat. Now, this follows the life of Cersei, who is the daughter of a god, but her face and voice doesn't fit with the sort of divine. And after she cast a few I was going to say cheeky spells, but I mean, someone ends up turning into a sea monster. Naughty spells. She is exiled to an island. Now, I'm going to get a lot of this wrong probably, but I think it's Aya, the island that she's exiled to. And then while she's there, she sort of grows her witchcraft and realises that she's much more able with herbs and things like that. Now, when I started reading this, I was a bit like, oh god, I don't think I'm gonna like this. There's so many characters in it. It's really moving really quickly, and I'm not able to remember a lot of these people's names. A lot of the names were very, very similar. There's a lot of names beginning with P in here, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. And also, this is a genre that I'm not really very familiar with. Weirdly, I did classical civilization for my AS level, and we did the Iliad. So you would think that I would know a little bit more about this, but I don't really. But I've been really enjoying it. I settled quite quickly into the quick pace style, and then now I don't want to stop reading it. So I am really enjoying it. I don't know if I'm loving it because it's moving so fast. I'm not finding that I'm able to sort of grow to love or hate any of the characters enough because it's all happening so fast. But yeah, I am really enjoying it, and it surprised me how much, because when I went to it I was really not enjoying it, and I was like, oh, I've bought this book and I'm not going to like it and everyone else likes it, but actually it's grown on me. So yes, very much enjoying it. It does read like someone sort of telling a story around a campfire. It reads like a legend really, so yeah, which is what it is. So yes, very much enjoying that. So those are the 3 books that I've had something to do with in terms of reading. I'd also predicted the next 2 books were going to be on the list, and these 2 books I'm planning on listening to on Audible. Now, the first one is Milkman by Anna Burns. This won the Man Booker, didn't it? Not Normal People. Milkman won the Man Booker. And this is written by Anna, who is an Irish author, and it is, I'm told it's written in a sort of stream of consciousness way, a bit like an Emma McBride. I don't know if you've read any books by her. I had read, oh my god, I can't even remember what it's called. Lesser Bohemians. I've read the Lesser Bohemians, and it took me a long time to get into that, and a lot of the time when I was reading it I was like, I'm not good enough for this, I don't understand. So a few people had said to me, listen to it on audiobook, because when someone's talking to you, it almost feels like you're listening to a friend explaining this sort of this story. It does sound similar to Emma McBride in that none of these characters have got proper names. So we're following, I think her name's Middle Sister, yeah, Middle Sister and almost boyfriend and people like that, father-in-law and brother-in-law and people and things like that. Now, I've taken a bit here from the Women's Prize for Fiction website, which is what I've done a few times, just to sort of get a feel for what the books are, because I feel like if I don't know much about the books, then that's probably a good place to get it from. So it says here that Milkman is a tale of gossip and hearsay, silence and deliberate deafness. It is the story of inaction with enormous consequences. I feel excited about that. And then the next one that I'm going to listen to is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which again is another one that I predicted. Now actually, when I predicted this, I thought it would either be The Silence of the Girls or Circe on the list, because they're quite similar, well, they're the same genre. So I was surprised and yet pleased to see both of them on the list. Now, The Silence of the Girls is the story of Achilles, told from the perspective of, now I think her name's Briseis, and you hear about the story of Achilles told from a female's point of view, which is why it's called The Silence of the Girls, because you never hear from this point of view. Normally this is a silent, female characters are normally silent in these stories. So I feel very excited to read that, especially in the spirit of Independent Women's Day. I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, so I'm going to listen to that on Audible, and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, I think I'll listen to Milkman first, and then Silence of the Girls, just to leave a bit of space between that and Circe. And then the last book that I predicted was My Sister, the Serial Killer, which is by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I've got this reserved at the library. As I said, there's a lot of books on this list, and I didn't want to just buy all of them because I don't have the money to buy all of them. So I've used my library for a few. I have bought a few. I've bought Circe, and I've bought another one which is on its way. I will talk about that one later. And I probably will buy more as the month goes on. We've got a booktuber meet up at the end of the month, so I'll probably buy a few more then. But I've been using the library and Audible to sort of get these books into me without having to buy all of them. So this is on the reserve list at the library, and I feel like it's done a bit of the booktube rounds. Has My Sister, the Serial Killer. Simon's mentioned it a few times. I've heard Jean mention it, and yeah, I feel excited about this. I feel like it sounds like a storyline that I'll be interested in. You follow Corradi, who is sister to Ayula. Now, Coradi helps Ayula clean up from these sort of self-defense episodes she's had with boyfriends, and quite quickly she realises that maybe they're not quite the self-defense episodes she thought, and that maybe Ayula might be a serial killer. This is set in Nigeria, and Coradi often thinks of going to the police about her sister, but then always thinks family comes first, and doesn't. However, then Ayula starts going out with a doctor that Coradi works with and who she's always had feelings for. So yeah, I'm excited to read this, and I feel like this is a good premise and a story that I don't feel like it feels quite original to me. I don't feel like I've read many books like that, so very excited. So ends there my predictions. Everything from now on I did not know would be on I didn't predict would be on the list. Some of which I'd heard of, the majority of which I hadn't, and I'll talk about the ones that I'm going to be reading first. So the next one that I've got on my library reservation list is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. Now I am pumped for this. I had heard it mentioned on, I think maybe the Reading Women podcast, but also I watched Anna and Eric's video where they were talking about their predictions for the long list, and I think both of them had this on their list, and I'm really excited. So this follows Celestial and Roy, who are newlyweds, and they've got sort of like they're living the American dream basically. They're both at turning points in their careers, and then Roy gets arrested and goes to prison for a crime, and he's told that he's going to serve 12 years for this crime. Now Celestial is absolutely certain that he did not commit this crime, but she stands by him. However, when she gets close to one of their family friends, a chap called Andre, I think, and then when Roy is released from prison early, they have to sort of both quickly work their lives around the fact that he's out of prison now and get back into the sort of like the family marriage groove that they were in. So yeah, it sounds really interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading that. And that is on the reserve list at the library at the moment for me. And then the last one I've got on the reserve list is Freshwater by Akweki Emezi, and this sounds really unusual and unlike anything I've ever read before. And this is about it's about a character called Ada, and she has many selves, and we hear from the perspectives of these many selves. And again, I've taken a bit from the Women's Prize website, and it says here that feeling explodes through the language of this scalding novel, which sounds very excited. And that is also written by a non-binary author as well, which is very interesting, and the first time it's happened in the Women's Prize. And then the last book I've got, the last one I've got here that I will be reading sort of soonish is Bottled Goods by Sophie van Llewellyn. Now, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but this cover I love. I actually really, really love it. I think it's because the cat reminds me a little bit of Minnie, and I would have that on my wall. I love that artwork so much so that I actually ended up buying it. However, it's not in stock for 1 to 3 weeks, so I probably won't be getting it anytime soon, but when it does arrive, I'll be reading it really quick. This is also another really short one. Jen sent me a photo of it, and it's quite a small, it's not even like a full paperback size, so it's quite a small, and it's described on the website as a novella. However, I think it's over 50,000 words it has to be, so it obviously qualifies for it, otherwise it wouldn't be on there. So this is set in 1970s Romania, which is a time and a country that I don't read much about. And we witness a strain on Alina's marriage as her and her husband have become persons of interest to the secret services after her brother has defected to the West. So that sounds very, very interesting. So the next ones, and I've marked with a little star. Look how much work I've done for this, guys. I've marked with a little star the ones that I'm interested in reading sooner rather than later. However, they're not, oh no, they are. Oh, that's weird. So the first 3 are ones that I'm interested in reading sooner rather than later, and then the last 4 I will leave, I will still get around to reading them, but if I don't read them in time, and they're shortlisted, and they're not shortlisted, then I probably won't read them. Does that make sense? I've made that sound really confusing. I'm really sat on the edge of my seat here, excited. Maybe I should relax. So the next one is Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luisia. And this follows a family's journey as they travel. They're living in America, and they travel down southwest towards Mexico, and they stop at motels on the way and diners on the way, and they have jokes, and there's a bit of like animosity between the mother and father, etc, etc. And then you also see journeys of children who are traveling up towards the US border through Central America and Mexico, and the horrors that they are experiencing, I imagine, in sort of stark contrast to this sort of holiday that this other American family are going on. So this sounds really interesting, and also very current and topical, and I'm very much looking forward to reading that. And then the next one is also one that I want to read, and that is Number One Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Lee. This is one that I'd never even heard of, and this is a family saga told from within the bustling restaurant. There's a lot to do with a father-daughter relationship. There's a 30-year-old friendship that is potentially going to turn into something else, and then disaster strikes, and sort of loyalties and family ties are tested in this restaurant, and I feel like that is something that I'll be interested in. Enjoy a family saga, I do. And then the next one is the last one that I'm super interested in reading, and then the last 4 are ones that I will get round to reading. I feel like I really have to explain myself about that, don't I? And that is Ordinary People by Diana Evans. I've written 2 lines about this book. It was enough to convince me. So it is set in South London in 2008, and you follow 2 families. There's new babies, there's staying faithful, there's family deaths, and how the families deal with that. And yeah, I just really love things like that. It reminds me sort of like Zadie Smith novels and things like that. They're set in London normally. And there's one of my hairs. So yes, those are the books that I'm keen to read quicker, and then the last 4 are ones that I am interested, obviously trying to read the whole long list. Don't keep explaining yourself, Lauren, but these are sort of like lower down my list of priorities. If I can get hold of them, then I will read them, but if they don't appear on the shortlist, I probably won't be reading them. So the first one is Praise Song for the Butterflies by Bernice L. McFadden, and this is set in West Africa, and a 9-year-old Abiokata is living quite a comfortable, normal life until she's placed in a religious shrine by her father as religious atonement for the crimes of his ancestors. She's enslaved and treated horrifically, and when rescued after 15 years, she must learn to live, love and trust again, which sounds fucking horrific. But also very interesting. And then there is Remembered, which is by Yvonne Battle Felton, and I hadn't heard of this before either. This is set in 1910, and Spring is in hospital as her son lays dying. She wants to tell him the story of how he came to be, and she does this through the help of her dead sister, newspaper clippings and reconstructed memories. Then Swan Song, which is one that I had heard of, I've heard quite a few people mention. That is by Kelly Greenberry Jeffcott, and this is a book about Truman Capote, who commits an act of professional and social suicide with his most lethal of weapons. Words. And then the last book is one that I'm probably going to leave till last, because I've heard quite a lot of bad stuff about this book, and I feel like there's been quite a lot of, I don't want to say shock, but I think people are a bit confused as to why it's on the list. Again, some people may like it, but the people that I've spoken to who have read it have not enjoyed it, and that is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This follows Lucy, who, according to the blurb on the website, sounds a little lost, and she's beginning a summer dog sitting on Venice Beach and meets an eerily attractive swimmer. Now, what I have heard about this book is that it's not very kind towards women, and there's been a bit of confusion as to why a book that isn't particularly kind towards women has been longlisted on the Women's Prize for Fiction book. So yeah, those are the books, all 16 of them, and those are my plans. Would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books. What have you been your favourite on the list? Did you make predictions? Did you get many right? What would you like to win? What would you like to see shortlisted? Will you be reading them? We'll be very, very interested. Let's all have a chat about it in the comments. Sorry this video has been going on for so long, but I hope you're all having a wonderful International Women's Day, and I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!